I've been playing on Dune Awakening's public test client in order to test out the new dual blades weapon, and honestly they're pretty incredible. The way that they work is by increasing in attack speed with each attack that lands. Not by very much, but it does definitely eventually become pretty fast, at least compared to other melee weapons. And this attack speed also increases with each slow blade. An interesting mechanic there is the slow blades are able to be comboed in with light attacks, allowing you to effortlessly alternate between light attacks and slow blades mid-combo, all while increasing in speed with each hit. In addition, similar to the sword, most of its attacks are AoE attacks, able to hit multiple enemies as you swing around the dual blades, which allows it to potentially fend off multiple melee attacks standing near each other in PvP if you're outnumbered. This all around makes for a very aggressive and fun playstyle with this weapon. However, it is still able to parry, just at a less effective means than other weapons, but this may actually be a bug, as I'll explain. For some strange reason, when right-clicking in order to block or parry with the dual blades, instead of it being almost instant like other melee weapons, it takes an entire second. And then, upon letting go of the block button, it takes an entire second again to put the blades down and recharge the block. Because of this slow parry and block speed, certain advanced techniques in melee combat, such as parrying a slow blade, are completely impossible with the dual blades. In order to compensate, I find hot swapping between normal sword for parries and then swapping back to dual blades to be the best option, but this is obviously pretty inconvenient. Another disadvantage the dual blades have, which may also be a bug, is its interaction with the wielding step ability. Normally, after using wielding step with a weapon that is not the dual blades, you can immediately slow blade attack in almost the same instant as the wielding step. However, with the dual blades, frequent issues occur, such as the player being taken out of the ready stance after using wielding step while holding the dual blades, as if they have disengaged from combat, and an extra second is needed to re-engage. Another issue which occurs is after readying up and slow blading immediately after wielding step with the dual blades, the slow blade won't be properly locked onto the wielding step target, and the slow blade will instead follow the direction the player is facing, hitting nothing, which is again inconsistent with how wielding step works with all the other melee weapons in the game. Despite these disadvantages, or most likely bugs, honestly the dual blades feel amazing, and I will be using them as my main weapon from now on when Chapter 3 comes out. That's it for my review on dual blades. However, feel free to keep watching these clips of the weapon in action in PvP here if you'd like. Before you go though, I also wanted to talk about the upcoming stamina changes and how they'll affect PvP and melee combat. Currently there are 3 types of staggers which increase the stamina cost of dashing, bringing the player close to being out of stamina and in a position to being killed. These 3 types of stuns are stuns from abilities, which will cost 90 stamina, the highest amount, stuns from being hit with melee attacks, which will cost 45 stamina, and non-full stuns, which will cost 30 stamina while you're in combat. And this is the same as the cost to dash at any time while you're in combat. Melee combat in the public test client is currently based around who can get more ability stuns more efficiently than the other person. And while this does allow for some room for differences in combat skill and finesse, in practice it honestly feels terrible more often than not, as both players will be constantly backing away from each other to save stamina for abilities and wait for their cooldowns, while rarely exchanging blows. Light attacks should be an important filler in melee combat, something that's intended to happen consistently and rapidly in between opportunities for slow blades, as it did a good few months ago in the earlier stages of this game. But currently, in the public test client, if you ever light attack in a melee fight, then you are usually wasting your time, as there's no practical use for melee light attacks in melee combat, with how easy it is to disengage and just walk away. And it can even put you at a disadvantage since they waste your stamina, meaning 90% of melee attacks will be slow blades, with anyone using light attacks in melee doing so because they are new to melee combat, They might be feinting for a parry, or they accidentally didn't hold down their mouse long enough for a slow blade. Following this proposed change made by Spice Rub, whose channel is linked in the descriptions, to how stamina costs differ with whichever type of stun, seems like a very reasonable solution to Melee's relationship with stamina in PvP, being about getting ability stuns over melee ones currently. And it would at the very least incentivize using melee light attacks in order to stagger again, instead of only using abilities, making for a much needed buff to melee overall. And the specific numbers in this proposed system of this exact chart can easily vary for balancing purposes. But the general ratio with a higher priority on melee staggers here should be kept, just in order to encourage players to use melee light and heavy attacks, instead of backing off and waiting for abilities all the time. That concludes what I have to say. Feel free to stay around and enjoy the dual blade gameplay.